Today we talk about pros and cons of training metrics. Hello legends and super legends. Welcome to Veloharmony. In today's video, I want to discuss training metrics. The video is inspired by some of the questions and discussions we've had, people asking about training to speed and so forth. I made another video in the past, I will put the link here, about training to speed, but I want to focus more on training metrics in general. What are training metrics? Training metrics, for example, could be cadence. Training metric could be heart rate. Training metric could be power. Training metric is not speed. Why is that? If you're riding down the road today and you got the wind behind you and you're doing 40 kilometers an hour in a particular gear at a particular cadence, you cannot necessarily replicate that exact scenario repeatedly because the wind might change, the surface of the road might be different if you're on a different road and so forth. Even on the same area like a track, each lap is different. You guys see time trials that the pros do. Somebody goes off in the morning and they got less wind or favorable weather, as opposed to the guys who are coming later in the evening. They might be dealing with more wind, rain, and different scenarios. For them to do the same exact speed per se, their effort will be different. Your effort can vary based on the humidity and how you're going and so forth and so on. So you cannot train to speed because it is a constantly moving target. That's why we reference it as a red herring. So when you talk about training metrics, you can always go out at any given time and shoot for 90 RPMs in a particular gear. Say, for example, it's 3917, it's 62-inch gear. You can do that. One time you do it with the wind behind you, it might feel easy, but you're still doing 90 RPMs in that same gear ratio. The next time, the wind in your face, to do 90 RPMs in that same gear, you will probably have to work harder if the wind's in your face or if you're going up a climb, but you can still replicate that exact measurement, meaning 90 RPMs in this gear. So that could be a training metric. So you could say, I want to be able to do this cadence in this gear that I was having problems with the boys on this particular hill. It doesn't mean that the way you felt that day or the environmental conditions you were dealing with would be the same, but you could still replicate it. What's the point I'm trying to make? Consistency. For something to be a training metric, it must be consistent. The reason why you cannot go out and continue to train and say, I want to do 90 RPM in this gear, because what it would mean is one day you may have to work twice as hard to do that same 90 RPM in that same gear if the wind picks up, the hill is steeper in a different place, and so forth and so on. That's why the advent of heart rate monitors and power meters took care of that situation, because those meters are independent of the wind and so forth within reason. The heart rate monitor has a lot of variability. We've talked about it before, based on your physical condition, humidity, the external condition. Yes, you can always generate 140 beats per minute, for example, but one day it might feel easier to get to 140. The next day, you might have to work harder to get to 140 due to either the wind, the terrain, how you feel, the temperature, the humidity, are you hydrated? That's the reason why heart rate numbers are considered to be full of variability for so many other external conditions. Power meters, on the other hand, do not rely on how you feel. The force you put out, they give you a number. So every time you put out that exact force, you will get the same number, albeit 150 watts, 200 watts, 300 watts, whatever. So every time you put a certain amount of force, The power meter doesn't care whether you're going uphill, downwind, whatever. When you put the same amount of force, it will display a number. That's why it's a good training tool. It's a better training tool versus the heart rate monitor. The heart rate monitor has its place though in that it monitors what's going on internally with your engine as opposed to just the force you're putting out. So coupled with the power meter, the heart rate monitor is a very, very effective tool. Till this day, even the pros use both the heart rate monitor and the power meter. Reason being is that they want to make sure to track their improvement, meaning 3 months ago, at 150 beats per minute, I was putting out blah, blah, blah watts. After a period of training, at the same 150 beats per minute, I'm putting out more watts or less watts. And then they can adjust their training in the manner that will help them go in the direction they want. Because if you want to improve, you got to find out why today you're putting out less watts at the same heart rate, or if you're putting out more watts at the same heart rate, then you know your plan is going according to plan. If not, then you adjust your plan. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't train the heart rate by itself. I do it all the time. Heart rate monitors are very effective in training for steady efforts because the heart needs time to get up. Most times your heart is stronger than your legs can drive it to. Because if you ride a lot, your legs get tired. If you don't let them rest, you can't drive your heart rate up. You've probably been on a ride where I can't get my heart rate up. That means you're tired. Your pistons just are not fresh enough to fire, or your gearing is too big and so forth, so you can't drive the heart rate up. But training the heart rate is very effective when you're doing steady efforts that exceed, I would say, 5 minutes. Very short effort, heart rate is not applicable. When you're doing sprints, heart rate does not matter. The heart doesn't have a chance to display anything, as opposed to a power meter that will show you 800 watts or 1,000 watts or whatever during a very intense interval. Now, the one thing I want to add, which I have not spoken about throughout this video, is the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion. You have to focus on, how do I feel at this wattage or this heart rate? It is important that you know whether you're going as fast as you can possibly go, or whether you're going at 50% effort, 25% effort. We call it riding by feel. It is very important because those gadgets just display what you do. What is important about feel is that you know your condition, meaning, why am I feeling so terrible at this low effort? That means that your body's not going good. Power meter can't tell you that. All a power meter would tell you is, today, try as you might, you're only doing 150 watts, which you could use as a signal to say, I probably should take it easy. But that's after you've already put out the effort. Feel, before you even put out the effort, you can tell, how do I feel today? I think that trumps all of them, because riding by feel is critical for every rider, regardless of the gadgets, because it's best to analyze data afterwards and really pay attention to how you feel when you put out effort. So a lot of riders who have ridden for quite some time only use those gadgets en route for reference. They don't ride fixated on those numbers. They ride, and then when, let's say, a hill comes and all of a sudden they get on the gear and they start to rock and roll and they start feeling crappy, then they reference, what heart rate is going on where my legs are feeling rubbery, or at what heart rate right now do I feel like I have to slow down? Coupled together, those tools work really well, but you cannot train to speed, because if you're riding and you say, I want to do 40 kilometers an hour, you have to rely on the fact that the conditions remain exactly the same. And that is rarely the case to come back to replicate that same speed. So no matter what, do not try to rely on speed. With the advent of Strava, everybody looks at average speed. All that means nothing. You can sit in a group and have a high average speed and you rode in zone 2 the whole day. Doesn't mean anything if you didn't hit the right zones, depending on what kind of training you wanted to do. So it's more important to use a tool like a heart rate monitor, power meter, or feel when it comes to training. Because if you're going as fast as you can, you're going as fast as you can. It doesn't matter what the wind is doing. It doesn't matter whether it's in your face or behind you. If you're going as fast as you can by feel, you're going as fast as you can. If you're going at 50%, you're going at 50%. You should always try to develop that, even if you're not good at it now, to know that, okay, I feel like I'm going 50%. I feel like I'm going what we call full gas or whatever. That way, you get to be a well-developed rider, a well-rounded rider that does not depend on these tools. Power meters break. Heart rate monitors crap out. Sometimes they give you erroneous reading depending on what are the electrical signals from the wires in the area you're riding with. There's a lot of things that impact these tools. And those of you who own power meters, you know what I'm talking about. It break very often. I had one. I ended up getting rid of it. It was a headache. It just was not reliable. They have more reliable ones out there that will work, but don't depend on them. They're nice to have. They're after the fact. What is most important, in my opinion, is that you pay attention to how you feel as you put out the effort. Then you will know whether you've recovered enough or whether your program is working. And to put all of that together without a structured plan, you don't need to be a racer to have a structured plan. Without a structured plan, it's hard to be consistent. Just like you want the power meter to be consistent, you as a rider need to be consistent in your training and your workouts as well as your rest. A lot of riders ignore rest. The workout is 50% of it. Rest is the other half. So you must work out and then rest. Then you complete the training cycle. Okay? To that effect, keep getting your K's in and let nothing stop you.